right up front. Uncommon for hosting. Thank you, Nick. And it's the International Connections series. So we're going to be talking about cybersecurity today, which is really important to us, and it's really important to your companies because that's what keeps you functioning, right? You're wondering, hey, who's this guy up front? I'm hosting tonight for Pierce Powers. He is in Mexico right now, celebrating his wife Sue's birthday. He wanted to wish that he was here, but I'm sure he's enjoying his pina colada on the beach. So he told me my one rule was don't let them have refreshments and wine beforehand. He said, keep it after. And so I'm already failing. I apologize, Pierce. They overruled. So tonight we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, though, to be real. And that's something close, especially to Pierce. That's why he asked me to be here tonight. He said, hey, we're often looked at as the insurance side, saying, hey, now that we've had a breach or now that something's happened, you call the insurance people. We're here to be here for beforehand, be consultative, help you before you have a breach, and work with these kind of folks like Nick and Alan and Tony here to say, hey, let's stop it before it happens. So that's, not only insurance, but let's be proactive. Nick is going to talk with the panel. He's going to moderate tonight and introduce the team here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adam. Thank you. Hey, so welcome. Good evening. My name is Nick Powers. I'm one of the partners of Uncommon, which is a technical consultancy here in St. Louis, Missouri. We specialize in cloud, cyber, and data solutions and working with the private and public sectors. Really excited to be here tonight. As I was mentioning to some of the folks here prior to starting tonight, I feel like COVID's over, even though I know it's not officially over, but it's great to see so many smiling faces today, both here in person and online. Just an amazing thing to be able to kind of get back to some kind of sense of normalcy. And we're so happy to be here, bringing World Affairs, STL back to the forefront. I know working with them, it's been a very important initiative to try to get this off the ground. And this is something we've been planning for almost a year now. It's something we really wanted to do for both the city of St. Louis and all the partners and businesses that we work together. So we're really, really proud to be here tonight. And, even I'm equally excited to be joined by two gentlemen tonight, veterans of our military services, tremendous leaders in St. Louis. And I'll get into the details of our guests tonight in a minute, but I'd like to set the stage a little bit for this conversation, this discussion tonight about cybersecurity. So as you know, the world is in an unprecedented level of threat today. There's cybersecurity hacks happening every day. It's in national headlines, global headlines. In fact, as you all know, the situation in Ukraine actually started with cybersecurity attacks, distributed denial of services, malware attacks, and whatnot. Really were the forefront of the new wars that we're going to be fighting for the next generation. And so cybersecurity is just at the top of everyone's minds. In 2021, there was over $20 billion of losses as a result of cybersecurity attacks, especially ransomware. And so as a firm, Uncommon, we've been working very, very hard to try to help people figure out how to solve these problems. And the gentlemen next to me are right in that space with me. When we also think about this, though, this is an international organization. This is not just a United States problem. This is a problem in Africa, Europe, Asia, and you might not know what's going on there, but I did a little research and I found, it's very interesting how in each of the continents we're seeing different types of attacks actually occurring. In Africa, for instance, they actually have a very robust digital currency system that they use to pay themselves. And as a result of that digital currency system is actually the forefront of cybersecurity attacks today. Europe is suffering similar situations as us here in the United States. We're seeing massive amounts of ransomware attacks. But in Asia, interestingly enough, we're seeing a ton of phishing attacks and a ton of identity theft. And really what we saw probably 5 years ago as a big threat is now really hitting Asia very hard. And so they're just in as much of a bad situation as we are today. And in South America and the Middle East, we're seeing a serious amount of threats against soft targets or what we say, industrial targets such as oil and gas pipelines and other critical infrastructure areas such as water and electricity. And so, it's a different threat surface in each of the different continents and countries, but it's still at the end of the day, it's a threat in cyberspace that we all have to face. And in some cases, how are we dealing with that? Well, we're dealing that with a lot of spending in cybersecurity education and workforce development. And that's one of the great parts of tonight's conversation that we're going to have, is we have a representative from that part of the industry, as well as a representative from one of the biggest and probably most recognized companies in St. Louis tonight, to be able to kind of walk us through some of the effects that we're seeing on these, as a result of these global attacks, the changes in regulation, and also the things that we're trying to do to help develop the next level of cybersecurity workforce. So first with me today, right to my immediate left, is Alan Berry. Alan Berry is the Chief Information Security Officer at Centene Corporation. He leads a team of professional security experts protecting Centene's Fortune 24 healthcare company, including the cyber incident response and cyber threat hunt and intel teams. With over 30 years of experience, including 26 years in the U.S. Air Force, Alan brings a wealth of knowledge in cyber operations, communications, command and control. So please greet Alan Berry to our panel tonight. Woo woo. Second but not least, my great friend Tony Bryan. Tony is the executive director of CyberUp, a nonprofit that is cultivating the cybersecurity talent pipeline for St. Louis today, tomorrow, and then has now expanded nationally. He joined CyberUp in 2016 and has served in the St. Louis region's nonprofit ecosystem for at least 10 years prior to that. He is now focused on creating high-quality apprenticeships and gamifying cybersecurity learning for K through 12 students. His bio leaves us off, but I also know that he spent a lot of time working with what I would say is underemployed type folks that have both left the military and or rejoining the workforce, which is near and dear to our hearts as well. And so I wanted to make sure I gave him credit for that. But Tony's here tonight to really kind of talk through the cybersecurity for the workforce development aspects of what we're trying to do here in St. Louis and nationally. So thank you so much, Tony, for joining us. Please let's greet Tony to the board. So we're going to try to have a discussion tonight. Trying to stop talking. I get it. So shut up, Nick. Let's get going with this. We've got some really interesting people here. And so I'll just set the stage and say, look, I'm going to ask a question. We're going to move this back and forth. We're going to have a conversation. If we get through all the questions, we'll get through them all. If we don't, we don't. We're just going to have a good time and hopefully enjoy and learn some great things about these two gentlemen tonight that I think will be very valuable to you. So the first question will go to Alan. So can you give us a quick overview of what Centene does and how it works in both the domestic and international markets?
Sure. Thanks, Nick. So Centene is, of course, a healthcare payer is our primary function. So that's Medicare, Medicaid, ACA, and also half of the DoD TRICARE business. And that's what most people know us as, and that's primarily US based. But we also have a fairly sizable European operation through our Ribera Salud subsidiary, and they're in kind of a gap. They do a lot of provider type as well. So they manage hospitals in Spain. We also have a large presence in the UK through clinics and other facilities, and then some smaller elements in Europe. So we're on the provider space in Europe and a little bit in the States, but primarily the bulk of what we do is on the medical insurance space and the government space.
Great. Yeah. So as you can hear, giving you kind of an idea of all of the areas that Alan works in and is responsible for. I think that's incredibly important as we think about the international aspects of cybersecurity. So Tony, can you kind of give us a quick overview of CyberUp and the types of work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so around 6 years ago, we started this, and to the generosity of our friends at Uncommon, it was identified that there are 8,000 current open jobs in the St. Louis market. And the idea was, is there need for an organization to have a focal point around workforce development, youth education, and really bring that together to make sure that we have enough smart, bright people that the Centenes of the world could hire. Over the past 6 years, our programs have continued to evolve. Our flagship program would be our apprenticeship. We were the third registered apprenticeship program in the country 4 years ago. That program, it finds, identifies smart, bright people, oftentimes in non-traditional backgrounds or underserved, underrepresented communities. We provide them with skills, certification training, preparation, which leads to confidence, resume building, and then ultimately putting them into an employment opportunity with an organization through apprenticeship. That pipeline, we're predicted to have 1 million, 1.5 million jobs over the next several years. It's important, and honestly, we don't hit full employment in this game if we don't do it, is getting in front of middle school and high school students and saying, hey, this is a really cool career field, finding a way to make it fun. So we have a virtual cybersecurity competition that runs through April to April. This is October to April. This weekend's our last competition of the year. I think our topic is cryptography. So we have about 1,000 kids in 18 states competing across the country. They earn prizes, and the goal is that we continue to grow this for scholarships and things. But more importantly, we want those kids to see, hey, I can do this. I have some skills. Point them to what skills path makes sense, whether it's community college, 4-year program, or something like our apprenticeship program. It's going to require all of those things to fill the jobs that are out there.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony.
Tony, I can tell you that works because my youngest son is 25. He's in the cybersecurity business. He got to start in a program called Cyber Patriot, which is focused on high schools that the Air Force Association runs. It's analogous to what we run in the Power Up Cyber Games. A little different, but same
focus.
concept.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony, the 1.1 million jobs, that was national?
Correct. There's 700,000 currently open in the United States, and that's just COVID impacted that, right? There was a dip in 2020, small, but then it has kind of seen an uptick in where that's at. So I have not, and maybe you have, I haven't seen any new forecasted numbers of what the growth is, but it was at 1.5, 2 million, depending on which article you read.
Yeah, the current global shortage from a labor perspective is estimated to be around 2.7 million jobs currently today globally. And that's after we had a banner year in 2021 in which globally we were able to actually get an additional 700,000 people into the workforce. And so you can see it's just a problem that isn't going away anytime soon. So Alan, you described Centene as a very complex business across multiple different types of borders. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot of regulatory issues across multiple different countries and continents. What are the key cybersecurity issues that what's keeping you up at night? What are those key cybersecurity issues that you're thinking about right now?
After a while, you just learn to sleep anyways, because there's always something to keep you up at night. Obviously, for the last 24 months, it's been ransomware has been the big threat, but even that has changed over the last 12 months. It went from kind of a rare event for a company to get locked up with ransomware, and really you didn't have much hope, you weren't prepared for it, to then it became very commonplace. Then they added this extortion element where they actually exfil the data before they encrypt your data. And so they try to get you twice. You want the key to unlock your data, that costs this much. If you want us to delete the data we stole, that costs this much. They don't delete the data, by the way, just in case you thought that they did and that they were honest. They're not. They're still going to sell it. So they get you coming and going. And now we're actually seeing it move to, no, we're just going to steal your data, because companies got better at creating backups and protecting the backups and being able to recover. So the encryption part stopped paying off as much. It still pays off, but not as much as maybe it did. Extortion is easier, it's quicker, it's less pain for the attackers, and it's a lot of times a better payoff ratio for them. So ransomware is the thing that keeps us up the most. And it's not just us, it's all our partners that touch us.
Yeah, we actually had an incident a couple of years ago when we really started seeing ransomware ramp up. And it was really interesting. It's a small company locally here. And we were trying to do whatever we could to help them out. And we got involved and we started seeing, the backup system wasn't there. They just didn't have the backups. They thought they were going to have the backups to be able to recover their business, and it just wasn't there. And so our team sat down with the owner, who coincidentally was the one that launched the ransomware attack by clicking on a UPS email that he thought was a real tracking email, and had access to all the files in the entire company. We sat down with him and said, we're going to have to pay the ransom. Well, the interesting thing about that is you actually, they'll give you essentially an email address and some other things to pay the ransom. We paid the ransom. The encryption key didn't work. But with the encryption key was a 1-800 number essentially. And our team called it and it was a help desk. And they said, how can we help you today? What can we do? And they actually walked us through getting another token, an decryption token, making sure that it worked. And they actually said, is there anything else we can do to help you today?
It's crazy.
And they said, oh, by the way, we just want to let you know, we didn't put ransomware in the attached PDF we sent you with the token. And in that PDF, it actually has a guide for how to avoid getting ransomware in the future. And we hope you have a great day. So it's a business. People are turning this into a business and they're exploiting, big and small businesses universally. And it's just a terrible, terrible thing.
I was just wondering, I have a little bit of exposure to this issue. My understanding is that some of the threat actors,
Oh, absolutely.
that they're focused on the extortion and the ransomware and locking you up. And then others are more data, stealing the data, selling on the black market, but normally they don't do both. But it sounded like you just said sometimes they are now, where they're
They
doing
totally
both.
are.
And that's
You
not
can't-
good. I mean,
They're
not
criminals. You can't
Yeah.
trust them. They're
Yeah,
criminals.
right,
They're
sure.
gonna do what's best for them. They are definitely in what you would call the realist school of thought. So if it's good for them, that's what they're gonna do. So if they have a buyer, they'll sell the data.
Even more interesting now, it has become so much more of a business that people are actually building platforms and you can go rent time on that platform to go conduct a ransomware attack.
It's ransomware as a service.
Absolutely.
It's franchised. You apply for a franchise to use their code to attack people. And you just pay a fee.
Where are they typically located?
That's what I was just gonna ask. I'm like, where are they?
Well, because it's the internet, they're located everywhere. They literally can be everywhere. There is definitely a concentration in Russia and Ukraine. So that's been interesting to see if anything trickled off, but I'm not seeing it trickle off. So people are still working, but it's the internet, so they can be anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, Microsoft released a study recently and said that in their analysis of what they call state-sponsored hacking, 60% of that is originating from Russia right now. But we cannot forget the threat out of Asia. So North Korea is our specialist at stealing intellectual property. And so that's the other part of this too, is we talk a lot about ransoms and people paying money, but it's also the theft of intellectual property, which is probably the worst part about that, right? Designs for airplanes, generators, and other things, that can really create catastrophic issues, that last for a long time. So Tony, we talked a minute ago about the glut of unfilled vacancies in the cybersecurity world. What are some of the contributing factors for why there might be so many job openings in the cybersecurity field?
How much time do I have? We were talking a little bit ago. There's a perfect storm, right? This concept of cybersecurity really is only 6, 7, 10 years old. I mean, there's always been a core of it, but this heightened sense of awareness or greater amount of marketing towards the word or idea, right? We didn't hear about this stuff 6 or 7 years ago about attacks and people getting ransomware and things. So you take that and a big marketing machine behind it and more increase, and then it creates demand, and the demand creates sensationalism, and then more people get crazy and sign up for ransomware as a service, and it all kind of blows up. Now, companies have to then respond to that and say, oh man, we're now seeing larger attacks. We should probably hire people and start doing this stuff. So, it boomed this idea of, hey, we need to grow our workforce. How many are on your team?
A lot.
Hundreds.
It's on the internet, Tony. I'm not
I'm trying to think. So there's the class I'm doing, there's a guy at Walmart, and just for an economies of scale. So you have Walmart and a hospital system here locally. His IT budget was larger than the entire budget of that organization, just for Walmart. And I think they had 12. It was insane. So that growth of jobs, the increased need of just having people in chairs, but most of Allen's employees they didn't come up a traditional path. So it's blended this idea of degrees and certifications and all of these different pathways to create this, skills paths for individuals. And it's just the demand has just boomed. So now it's taking that huge demand and influx of people. And then finding organizations and really working with them to figure out, okay, great, how do I now take these people? How do I find them roles? How do we partner with organizations to actually accommodate and bring on entry level talent? I think that quasi circled around the answer to your question. Maybe not directly, but it was I soapbox. I apologize.
So for a follow-up, and either of you guys can answer this, one of the things that you kind of brought up is this is a new industry, right? This is a emerging industry. And so when you look at the other parts of businesses like HR that have to support the hiring of these people, is there a change in how they understand how to evaluate talent or how they're bringing talent in? Have you guys seen a shift there to be able to help, get more folks into companies to be able to do these jobs?
There are boutique firms that specialize in cybersecurity talent. But the average company's HR talent acquisition machine is not going to have anybody that really understands the job. Exceptions to every rule, of course, but most of them don't. So then they're stuck with keyword search kind of processes. And I think we all know how that works.
Absolutely.
You're going to lose a lot of really good talent that doesn't know how to fill out the boxes properly. So it is a challenge without a doubt. And telling your talent acquisition team, open spigot up wide, don't filter it and let me look at the resumes, runs counter to what they think their job is. They're not wrong. Their job is to take that load off the hiring manager and do it for them. But if they don't understand how to read the resume, or a military resume, even worse, then you lose out on talent.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Quick pro tip for everybody online. If you want to get through a job filter, all you have to do is copy the job description and put it in white font at the bottom of your resume. It will get picked up on all of those word searches. All right. So Alan, I'll belabor this so you can take a drink. We've seen the United States implement policy and regulations over the last 12 months that aim to address the glaring cybersecurity threat that we face today. Do you think these policies and regulations are having the intended effect?
Having the effect yet? No. Can they? Yes, there is hope. One of the challenges is a lot of the policies that are coming out, the executive orders, the potential laws that are going to get signed, or even the SEC asked a couple of months or about a month ago about changing SEC reporting regulations about cybersecurity, is a lot of them are focused on responsible disclosure. So your company gets hit, you have to disclose it in a certain amount of time, whether it's to the SEC or to the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency. What constitutes that disclosure? What element means it's an incident and you actually have to do the reporting? And then what protections are they going to put on that? So if your company got infiltrated by somebody that managed to get a phishing email in and it spread malware to 15 machines before you turn it off and you disclose it, have you fixed all the holes before you did the reporting? Or did you just give an attack path for the next guy? Because the SEC is going to put it on their website. They've already said it's an 8K. It's going on the website. So did you just give them an attack path? So there's a lot of problems to get worked here. The intent is really good. The execution is going to be really hard. So time will tell. I'm hopeful.
Well, it's interesting, Alan, is in our industry, the cybersecurity industry, information protection is at the utmost paramount. And when you start exposing how someone has taken you down or gotten through your network and you put it on a public website, yes, maybe I secured myself before that was done, but maybe my competitors haven't. And so you've just exposed all my industry competitors to a potential threat. And so it's always been paramount in our industry to protect that information. And so having the SEC and some of the other federal regulations stepping in there is really kind of counterintuitive to what we've really been taught as an industry to do. And so it definitely is going to take some time to adapt to that, I think, as well.
It's also risk on the company. And if you're the management of that company or the board of that company, and doing this report increases the risk on your company, you're kind of putting yourself, between a rock and a hard place.
Absolutely.
Do I comply with this rule or do I add risk to my shareholders.
It's not a great place to
And
be.
you have laws that say you can't do that. You're financially responsible as a board member to not add risk, to do the right thing for your shareholders.
Right. It's going to change the whole paradigm.
I'll add to the policies. There's out of the 600,000 open jobs, many of them sit in government agencies, DOD. And most of those jobs have very strict requirements. Uncommon's hiring people all the time, right? There's a secret clearance or top secret clearance, and there's usually a degree requirement or some higher level of certification. And so to Alan's point of just the job filters, there are people that don't meet those requirements for those government roles that they can't get in. So for me, I know there were some executive orders that were put out that were intended to reduce degree requirements to have a larger pool of candidates to be able to go in the federal government. But I don't know that I've ever seen that come to fruition or if it's actually hit execution, because there's still a dearth of talent that sits there. If I had $1 for every government contractor who had called me and asked me for somebody with a degree and a top secret clearance and a CISSP certification, I would be very rich and wouldn't have to ask anybody for money. We'd be good.
It's probably going to take 10 years to ripple through the DFAR so that all the acquisition regs reflect that you no longer have to meet this requirement.
So kind of following up on that, Tony, is, there's the regs coming down to try to help with maybe lowering some of the standards to allow some non-traditionals to get through. But have you seen additional funding yet hit? I know you guys do a lot of work with the Department of Labor. You do a lot of work with the state of Missouri in developing and finding grants in order to help fund a lot of the education. Have you seen any type of increase in that funding or capability there that has really kind of, would make it attractive, maybe someone in our audience to think, I can't afford to get a cybersecurity certification or education or come in through an apprenticeship? Well, there's actually programs in place to be able to help pay for that, right?
Yep. So I would say if I was a betting man on the low end, there's probably been about $1 billion spent over the last 5 years in the federal government for Department of Labor. There's a grant next week that's due for $113 million that's specific to hubs or geographic hubs or specific subject matter. So the government has done a really good job of investing into this idea of diversifying workforce. Every one of these grants have had higher priority for underserved, underrepresented communities. And I think it's done a pretty good job. Pretty good, not great job. It has led to lots of those skills paths that I alluded to of like somebody who could find some training there, but it hasn't done well. It has led that those things are now leading to the job creation because they're still back to the, I'm going to beat this to a dead horse and I apologize, but like if I can give tons, I could train 17,000 people in the city of St. Louis and not charge anybody a dime. But if I don't have 17,000 jobs to put somebody in, I've just trained 17,000 people and got their hopes up in a career. So those two things have to be hand in hand. But yes, the federal government, the state of Missouri was number 2 in apprenticeship in the United States. I think they'll go back up because they did a partnership, but I think the state of North Carolina, like every National Guard in the state of North Carolina became an apprentice. So they jumped up above Missouri. And that was only to California, which that's an unfair playing field because they're massive, right? So Missouri has done a really good job. Illinois equally has done a great job. Madison and St. Clair County has done a phenomenal job of supporting companies there. If you are an organization that is interested in apprenticeship, I'm happy to help you kind of navigate that path. Your local job centers, St. Louis City, St. Louis County, they all have dollars. They would like to spend them. They just, you have to know the right words to say to those organizations, and they will gladly give you money because they have to spend it and are graded on what they're getting spent on. So, yeah.
It's awesome. Talk to Tony about free money.
I was gonna say, we'll have to put his email on that.
Absolutely.
There is a lot of money sitting, and that's not just in Missouri, but there's a program, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. It's a great national program. It was created, I don't know, several years ago. I think it's up for relook this year to see how it goes. But those dollars they're allocated towards salary reimbursement for an individual. That could be for their first 6 months up to 50%. They can cover some of the training dollars, so there's a lot of flexibility in it.
Awesome. How the NGA could potentially affect cybersecurity? Would that create more cybersecurity jobs in St. Louis, or?
Right now, most of the cybersecurity work for NGA, I think, sits in their NGA East campus. I think as the facility starts to open up and more people start to fill the campus, it is much more cost effective to hire here in St. Louis than it would be in the East Coast. So back to the clearance piece and some of those requirements, there has to be some work done to make sure that we can have lots of training, connect them to those roles, and then help with the clearance.
Awesome.
Yes.
So Alan, we've talked a little bit about regulation and policy here in the United States, but as we know, and as you guys do business globally, there's so many different standards out there. There's so many different policies and regulations. And so I'm interested in knowing, like, is that creating a lot of problems for your company? And have you maybe noticed an opportunity where we could potentially even shift to more of a global standard now that a lot of countries have adopted a lot of different types of privacy and things like that? I mean, California now has policies in place that are very similar to GDPR. And so, I'm very interested in your look at global policy and regulation and how it impacts, your business.
I doubt we'll get to a global policy that's acceptable in my lifetime, just because of politics.
Sure.
It's not that it's a bad idea, it's just extremely difficult. I'm trying to get a resolution through the UN and see how long that takes you and the pain you'd go through. So, but people emulate success. And that's what you saw in California is they liked the European GDPR. So they basically copied it, made some changes to make it theirs, but it's very similar. New York State was actually a little quicker than they were. So the insurance industry in New York State, their regulators required a lot of changes even quicker. And so the states in the US will probably always lead the federal government, my guess, most of these items, because they have the ability to turn a little quicker, a little more nimble. They don't have 50 states they have to deal with. They just deal with their own. But success breeds imitation. So where things work and where it succeeds and where it does something good, then other people will imitate it and adopt it and make it their own. There's always a little overreach. That's natural. When GDPR went live in, 2017, I think it was, 2018, there were predatory lawsuits already prepped and ready to go, and they were filed in the first hour. And they were against all the big guys like Google and Microsoft and Facebook for billions of dollars. And it was all just predatory noise. Now, it doesn't mean that those folks didn't earn some of that, but at the end of the day, come on, the first hour, filed the lawsuit.
Right.
That's pretty predatory.
Yeah. So, when you think about it, though, having to meet compliance across so many different standards globally, I mean, the costs of that have to be phenomenal. When you think about it, is it, are there ways of mitigating that in a way, or are you really having to have experts in every area of the world that you guys are doing business in?
Necessity is the mother of invention, another nice saying. So there are companies that are springing up that specialize in this. So right now, I might have a state that wants me to be NIST 853 certified. Another one wants me to be NIST 800-171 certified. Another one wants ISO 27001. Another one wants a high trust cert. So all these different frameworks for regulatory compliance. And there's a huge overlap in all these frameworks. They're not unique. They're not 100% unique. But there's enough differences in each of them that you have to look at all of them. So there's companies springing up all over the place that will take all your answers and then lay it across all the frameworks. So if a state shows up and says, well, I want it for ISO 27001, you can hit the button and here's the answers for all ISO 27001.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
it's real, it's
Yeah.
accurate, it's not a
Yeah.
lie. And they'll help you understand, well, here's the questions you didn't answer because you didn't ever do this kind of cert before. It doesn't give you the cert. You still have to have an auditor, an external third party come in, do the review and issue the certification and all that. But you can answer all the questions in the format needed and know where you have holes to be able to address that.
That's
Otherwise,
awesome.
you're right. I'd have to have somebody trained in every one of these frameworks. I'd have to pay an external auditor for every one of these frameworks and get a letter. Don't forget SOC 2, Type 2, and all the SEC requirements and Sarbanes-Oxley requirements for public companies, and it just becomes impossible.
Right, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Good to hear that the innovation is really starting to, pay dividends in that space for sure. So Tony, you touched a lot on, your work developing cyber apprentices, the benefits that they can bring, the programs in place to help kind of offset some of the costs of those things. What do you, if you had to, tell somebody the benefit of bringing in a cyber apprentice and the impact that it can have, can you give me like a quick synopsis of what that would look like? I'm a new company. I have no idea what a cyber apprentice is, and I want to maybe give it a shot. What does that look like? Like, what kind of person am I getting?
Yeah, I mean, our focus has been on smart, bright humans with a little bit of tenacity and grit that you can, that have you say it best, a genuine curiosity. I think
A whole lot of curious and a little bit of suspicious.
that type of person, right? That you can at least get to a baseline of skills. And so we've had to increase our rigor just to Nick's point. We can establish a human that there's at least a consistency of where that person's gonna go. Every person is different. We have found that, there's tons of stats out there, just the value of apprenticeship and the return on investment. I'm a less granular than that, and I'm not saying it's not important, but companies come and there's tons of, will not say a bad word, complaining or just, irritation of just retention, right? Somebody comes, Centene makes an investment in this person for 2 years and they spin you up and they leave you. Because some recruiter is going to come out and say, here's $40,000 more to come do the next job. Sometimes it's for money, sometimes it's for promotion because they're not seeing that in that organization. So apprenticeship, because you're giving somebody who would be a non-traditional candidate an opportunity they might not have had on their own, there's an incredible amount of loyalty to that person because they're working with you and you've made that investment. The other aspect, I think, is that you continue to get support from us and for the apprentice because you're getting additional certifications and coaching and mentoring for that candidate over the course of their 12 months. So it's really not any different than if you imagine a painter or a carpenter, right? They're moving through a sequence, they're getting additional certs, and it does provide an incredible support system for that hiring manager. Hiring's hard. They're all busy, right? You just heard all the things that his team is responsible for. And now you're bringing somebody new. We've all hired somebody new at some point, and it's that process of like, oh my gosh, I've got to take time to meet with Joey every day and have this conversation. We're on that end, we're a partner. If you have a bad day, Joey can come and call us and say, I've had a really bad day, or we can have conversations with Joey that maybe you as a employer can't have, right? Because we're not going to have under the same rules or laws that maybe there. We could have some tough love for that apprentice. And have some genuine conversations. So, outside of that, I think the statistic, every apprentice or dollar spent on an apprenticeship, you get $1.14 back for every dollar. So there's lots of data out there, but from a holistic perspective, it's the right thing to do. Invest in talent in an organization, grow it in the right way, be an organization that is acceptable to entry-level folks, and do not be afraid of just constantly making decisions because you're afraid they're going to leave you for somebody else. They're going to leave whether you invest in that person or not. If you do the right thing, and I'm sure Alan can dive into some of the things Centene has done, I think, to retain people, but it really is an important aspect. Invest in your talent and treat them right, and you're good.
So have you seen those results, you think, as you guys have brought on apprentices in the, over the last, couple of years, or?
Yeah, there is a lot of gratitude. Tony's right. So when you take somebody that is just looking for an opportunity and you give them the opportunity, definitely has a high upside payoff. But retention for employees in general in this space is a daily contest. I've got entry-level employees that 6 months into the job are getting offers for twice their pay. And it's just hard to beat. You're 6 months into your job, your career, and somebody wants to double your pay. So you feel like all you're really doing is training people for other companies, and that gets frustrating. But the way that we've really tried to address that is, well, first we created this thing we call a career ladder. So it spells out every one of our teams, the skills required at every level of employee, analyst 1, analyst 2, senior analyst, principal analyst, engineer one, engineer two, senior engineer, architect, senior architect, all the way through the channels for all the teams. That includes what's the certification we care about. We use the NICE framework, which is a NIST product. Tony's actually on the board for the NICE framework. So thanks, Tony, for building that. It still spells out all the requirements and job characteristics and KPIs for any accountants out there and folks that like to see KPIs on things. And then we tell the employees, here's all the skills we value for each one of these levels. If you want to move from incident response to threat hunting, this is what you should go master. And this is the kind of class you should go focus on. And then we help them. So where possible, we pay for the class. And when you can do all of that and you help them move from that first job to that second job to that third job all inside your company, there's a huge payoff on the financial side. Because if I have to go buy that expert talent, it's going to cost me a lot more than if I just made it myself by keeping this employee engaged, training them, showing loyalty to them as well. And it has payoff.
Yeah, and therein lies kind of a great example of how to combat some of the talent issues that we've seen in this industry. At the end of 2021, we actually saw upwards of 20% of the workforce was actually resigning and leaving cybersecurity jobs. And a big part of that is companies not necessarily, spending the time to really think through, what we just said earlier, which is a brand new kind of emerging, career path. And so spending that extra time helping develop those levers and those recognition towers really works to keep these employees engaged, happy, and really protecting you. They're the first line of defense in what we're doing on a day in and day out basis. And this is no different in some cases than air traffic controllers that get burned out. People can get burned out in the cybersecurity field just as bad. They're worried, they're responsible, they feel they're very mission oriented, and it's just very important that you take that into account as you're thinking about the types of people that you're bringing on to help you with cybersecurity. So guys, I really appreciate the time today. We're coming up to the end of, I guess what I would say is our general discussion. And so online, we may or may not have some questions. No questions currently. So, we got some questions in the room. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Tony, how many of these apprentices have you here in St. Louis filtered through and positioned into places like Centene and others?
So moving
6 years or whatever.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say it's a moving target as we've continued to grow. When we did this 4 years ago, I'm gonna be honest, we had no idea what we were doing, right? We just it was that idea of it's field of dreams. If you build it, right, there's 6,000 jobs, they're gonna call and bang down my door. And that didn't happen because companies just weren't it wasn't new. And I will say just who just unionized? Was it Google? There was the tech companies. Yeah. Well, we had to break down some barriers, right? I would say year one and 1.5 had to break down barriers around apprenticeship stigmas. It's not trades. It's, this is a thing you could do in this technology space. I'm gonna give a long answer to get you where you're at though.
That's fine.
But I think it's important context, right? Just of the natural evolution of apprenticeship. Because as I shared with Larry, we were 3, there are now 150 apprenticeship programs in the United States. I promise you that's not all good. I promise you it's not good. But when you have billions of dollars going out, it's really hard to not have 150. So, first year and a half breaking down barriers. It's not a trade. It's not an internship. And this is the value of it. And then us just figuring out, okay, cool. How do we find people? How do we give them skills? And then start to get them into the roles that they were qualified enough for a Centene to hire. Because when we first started, it was, I'm going to go walk down the street, find Joe Schmo. You're a cybersecurity professional. Hey, Centene, you want to hire Joe Schmo? And they're like, absolutely not. Right. So we had to do some figuring out and add some pre-apprenticeship and some training and some stuff. So over the past 2 years, where we really kind of hit our stride, 90% of our graduates, we train about 200 people a year, are all either going on from placements we have done into apprenticeship, or we've done, I guess, a good enough job where people recognize our name and we're getting snatched up pre-finishing our program. As soon as they slap our logo up, they're getting snatched. So 90% of our graduates since that have gone on to get jobs.
Well, I mean, I think you're scratching the surface because it sounds like really growing exponentially, and certainly here with the companies that are here.
I have heard a lot of objections. I could throw 6 reasons that somebody's objection to why they shouldn't do it, why they should do it. And it's just gotten a better pitch, I guess.
What about, you mentioned people who need opportunities, you know, and Alan pointed this out, but Centene stepped up after Ferguson did all that new construction and put some stuff up there in Ferguson, which is completely admirable and fantastic. So you should have, I guess, some draw to disadvantaged communities to filter some of these people into opportunities like yours.
And we do.
What has happened in that regard?
So full disclosure, I'm on the board at Cyber.
My board president.
So that's our focus. Minorities, women, veterans, that's our focus. That's who we go look for to try to give them this opportunity because so many people just need the opportunity. One of our board members grew up in southern Mississippi and he was telling us Tuesday morning, none of his friends down there have any idea what cybersecurity is because they were never exposed to it. How he managed to make it there is on him. Great. But let's take that away. Let's take the hurdle away and find a way to give them the path so that they can do this. And that's what we focus on.
So are these, I'm sorry, Larry, are these people that are coming out, basically really finding people who have just graduated college, high school? Or are they already in junior college or something and they find the path? I mean, who are?
Not good. I would say our greatest success has been a career transitioner. Somebody who maybe was at a job that is being downsized or,
So they're already out of high school or
Correct.
whatever.
Youth apprenticeship is hard. We have had some, but in youth apprenticeship, according to federals, 18 to 24 is youth apprenticeship. I haven't figured that out, but 18 to 24. We've had a few, but that's like asking Alan or any company for a 19-year-old high school student to jump into network and have that stuff. There's some perceived risk and we've not hit the level I think that we probably should. It's scary. It can work. There are unicorns, but in mass, it's definitely hard.
Yeah, well, the younger people are they're gonna have ants in their pants and they're gonna be, like you said, they'll be there 6 months.
But the flip of that, there are really good examples, right? So there's a school district in LA. This school is getting students in middle school. They're learning IT fundamentals. They're getting certifications. They're doing competitions like ours. These, all through high school. Those are leading to scholarships to college. Those are leading to pathways. Students that are leaving out with 2 or 3 industry recognized certifications. That's a different human that a Centene would be interested in hiring. But we locally, and I'll even throw the whole state under the bus, the whole state of Missouri hasn't jumped on board with that. There are pockets. North Tech in North County, South Tech has done a really good job. There are a couple of other, we'll call them your magnet schools, your collegiate school, and those have done a really good job with this. But in mass, there hasn't been enough programming created from a state down or a standard established of like, this is, we're going to have this computer science program. They have a mediocre solution. And I guess for content, I do sit in the state of Missouri workforce board, so I have an impact on this, but the solution has been Project Lead Way. It's an okay curriculum, but it doesn't necessarily lead to a cert for that middle school, high school student.
Larry,
Thinking in terms of St. Louis and this region as a site selection target for companies to come here, and this is thinking about your job. Yep. By the fact that what you folks represent, a pipeline of talent development and being able to put them to work, does this give this region an advantage? Or are we above average in terms of markets that are trying to bring businesses in because of the availability of this talent? Or where are we in the sort of national ranking of developing this capability?
I think we're above average. I don't know if there's a real rating to rely on, but we're not the only nonprofit in the area that focuses on tech. So if you've heard of Launch Code,
Sure.
they're huge. They're right here. There's several others in similar space. There's a big presence with, was it Girls Who Code or
Quarter girls.
Coder Girls? And so there's a lot of people focused on this dynamic to be able to build this talent locally and leverage this talent and make it a more attractive location to bring people here. I think NGA building their facility here is going to help too. Because like Tony said, it's a financial win for NGA to start hiring a lot of that kind of talent in the Midwest than hiring it in DC, in Arlington. That's an expensive place to hire talent. So you're going to see more and more of that grow. But I don't know if there's a solid ranking to rely on anywhere. That's the hard part.
Well, I would say, you know, look at what we've seen happen in the last 10 years. The only way we end up with Cyber Up is a group of government and nonprofit organizations in St. Louis came together and they came and said, we need to start a cybersecurity workforce development program. And so it was a joint effort on both sides of the river to kind of bring that to fruition. And part of the initial mission of that was to really get private and public sector working together. And Tony kind of, as a military veteran himself, was able to kind of pull together, you know, the Alan Berries of the world with the commanding general of US Transcom and the commanding, leaders of Scott Air Force Base. And what you saw then over the next couple of years is some tremendous, I guess you could say, conferences, learning opportunities. We've seen a massive amount of jobs come to St. Louis, whether it be Accenture setting up a shop in town, Boeing migrating a lot of jobs here from IT, Purina, Energizer, just a significant amount of IT presence has been moved into St. Louis in the last 10 years. And I think that kind of revolves around this whole idea of bringing a better global awareness of, you know, we have some amazing people in the St. Louis region that I always like to say we're blue collar, white collar workers, right? We roll up our sleeves, we get invested in our companies, we're loyal, and we really put the time in. And whether it be cybersecurity, coding, cloud, whatever it is, we've seen a tremendous impact that St. Louis can make in not only the national, but the global communities as well. So it has definitely made St. Louis an attractive place to set up shop. And then I didn't even talk about the innovation communities, right? So Cortex and T-Rex that have brought tremendous assets from all over the world into the St. Louis ecosystem. So I think we've seen great amount of growth. I think we'd love to see it get better. I think we're also suffering from a post-COVID situation where we're also seeing a lot of our talent now being poached by the coast. You can sit in your basement in your underwear and code all day long. And as a result of that, the Facebooks, the Googles, and really even the banks of New York and things like that are all coming to St. Louis now and remotely hiring away a lot of our talent. And so how are we going to fix that? Well, we all have to work together to continue to develop that talent and bring them through the pipeline.
I think GSL has done a good job of a rally cry, right? Like I think that was a needed thing of what does the next 10, 20, 30 years look like. That 2030 jobs plan with some targeted focus area, I think was a great addition. Greater St. Louis. Tech STL is bubbling up and they're setting some, ambitious goals around what the region could do together. And I think it's not necessarily, we have a tendency to operate in silos within our city, but we have to tell a unified story right around what this is to help drive that economic development. And I think oftentimes, I'm trying not to be a Debbie Downer here, which I feel like I am, but oftentimes what happens, right, is that we all forget the importance the city plays in this, right? Like the city is a hub and a vibrant place for the community. I live in St. Charles County. My county executive forgets that if St. Louis is not doing well, neither does St. Charles County. The same for Madison. So like it's imperative we all have that same kind of rally cry, think through what that is and what are the targets and goals, because it helps economic developers tell a good story. Hey, you want to go to St. Charles County for, good quality homes that are cost effective and decent schools or parks, go crazy, go over there. So there's lots of things, but I think we've been fortunate to have some of those economic development when people do site visits to come in and say, hey, this is what we could offer your organization. So that part's been fun.
Got one online?
Yes, there's one question. Bill Butler asked, you might have answered this already. It's been mentioned the importance of catching students when they are young. However, is there a possible fit for mature people in their mid to late career in cybersecurity?
Yes.
Yeah, so just making sure everybody here is online. I don't know if we got mics over there, but the question was related to, is there an opportunity for someone mid to late in their career to jump into cybersecurity? And I think all three of us are in agreement that absolutely, it's never too late to shift into a cybersecurity career. I think in particular, some of the best people that I've met in cybersecurity are people that have transitioned out of other jobs, right? They've got life experiences, business experiences. They know certain things that maybe someone doesn't have coming out of college, and they're able to really transition and be really effective workers. But, happy to hear what you guys think on that.
One of my managers came to us after he was the police chief for one of the local cities. So he had gone all the way through, the law enforcement realm, working from, your first job as a patrolman, being the police chief. And he's like, I think I'm going to try out cybersecurity. We got a degree and we hired him. So yes, there's always an opportunity for mid-career changes. In fact, one of the first people I interviewed an apprentice was a swimming instructor from like Rio. And she had moved to the States and was still teaching swimming, and she wanted to get in cybersecurity.
That's awesome.
So it doesn't really matter what your background was. If you have the right tendencies and the right aptitude, especially, cyber up, that's what we're built for, is to help you get to that path.
We've gone from burger flippers to bankers across the spectrum for putting people into roles, and it's a little bit of tenacity, regardless of age, getting yourself out there, meeting individuals, networking, and just building that network and relationships, I think goes a long way. And understanding how to articulate, hey, these are the skills, this is how I'm transferring. Being a swim coach, right? Those are things that you do have transferable skills. We can put hard skills, but how do you make the two things work together?
I even talked to a golf pro a few months ago. He wanted to get in cyber.
I've talked to a lot of people in 6 years.
I can see a lot of people, that want to get out of golf and into cyber. After I lose 5 or 6 or 7 balls on a hole, I definitely want to think about something else while I'm drowning my tears away on the 19th hole. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for taking the time this evening to participate on this panel with me. I think it's been a great, hour-long discussion, and I really appreciate you guys. And
Pleasure.
and allowing us to have this conversation. We're looking forward to having more events in the near future. So thank you so much.
We want to thank Uncommon and Powers Insurance for sponsoring the event and the reception that we are about to enjoy. So thank you guys.
Thanks,
Please
everybody.
stay and ask more questions.